and shifting from, being accountable for cash, risk, and liquidity to the accountability of delivering insights, delivering deliverables on a project, and client satisfaction.
Welcome to Actualizing Success. In this podcast series, our in-house advisors discuss today's finance and technology topics with an emphasis on solutions that embrace tomorrow.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Actualizing Success podcast. My name is Paul Baram and with me is Louise Georgiou. I'll let her introduce herself in a second. A little bit of a change in focus. Previous episodes have focused on some topics around such items as in-house banking and Treasury. What we're going to do today is talk about consulting. Specifically, our title is 60 Days into Consulting. Our special guest, and really why we're doing this, Louise, perhaps you could just quickly introduce yourself and the context to why we're covering this today.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. This is Louise. I have recently joined the Actualize consulting team from a background of 25 years plus in Treasury. My last role being Vice President of Global Cash Management, and I'm excited to share with you today my experiences in a new role.
Well, there you go. You see that, but this is the interesting thing, right? Is we have people from all kinds of backgrounds in Actualize. A lot of us have come through, like myself, through a system side, some purely into consulting, and I think it was interesting that you've come into consulting, shall we say, later in your career. I mean, you're only 25, obviously, Louise, but somehow you've crammed in all those years of experience. So here's a bunch of questions for you. Question one, what motivated you to transition from corporate treasury into consulting?
Well, Paul, to be quite frank with you, I had always had a desire to have a broader impact. Typically as an AT and in the cash management space for so many years, you kind of limited to your role, your responsibilities, and within one organization. Consulting, I always felt, would give me the opportunity to apply my experiences and my knowledge across various industries and various companies. I think these skill sets are highly in demand, especially for corporations that are undergoing rapid growth and transformation. That is the nutshell of my decision.
No, it makes total sense. And as someone a bit more senior in consulting, with the years I have, that breadth of experience, I think, is what makes it interesting to me. But let's go back to what you were doing in your last role. What were your most critical responsibilities in your last role as an assistant treasurer?
I think throughout the 25 years and the various roles that I had and the breadth of my responsibilities, the most critical role and responsibility for me was always cash management and liquidity. Ensuring cash was always available across multiple entities, multiple types of businesses, and across all the geographies. It came with the responsibility of cash repatriation on a daily basis, cash flow forecasting, investment, and structuring funding for ongoing M&A activities.
It's true, and you say sort of cash operations, and then as you say, there's like 10 different subpoints you've just kind of rattled off, and it's all in broader service of the organization, right? So, how do you go about aligning those treasury operations that you've just mentioned with the broader business services and operations of the company you're working for?
Well, the alignment for me was always in a three-part process, right? The first part was making sure we had regular planned meetings with the various business units. They were structured. We embedded a treasury go-to person. I used to call them a liaison. So there were various individuals in our organization and treasury function that were assigned to the different business units. So they were the go-to person if there were questions or queries that needed to be done. And I think the third most important thing that actually made it a success story, in other words, a very nice synergy between Treasury and the business units, was tailoring our Treasury solutions around the business's requirements, like risk hedging management, FX hedging management, like real-time data provision to the business units, and catering for their needs.
It makes total sense, and it sort of aligns with, I guess, where I was going with that in terms of being that service function for the business to help them succeed. So you sort of talked about people and that sort of aspect of things. What about thinking about it from a technology point of view? Do you have any sort of technologies or tools that you thought about as being, shall we say, game changing in your Treasury teams?
Well, Paul, that goes without saying. I think the investment in a treasury management system many years back, I would say it was 12 plus back, was definitely a valuable investment. And it actually proved to be a valuable investment for Treasury during the COVID period and lockdown. When you have Treasury centers across the globe, as well as companies across the globe, the lockdown and COVID really impacted operations, visibility, access to bank accounts. And that was like one of the biggest investments we did, and I think the most valuable. And to be honest, it wasn't only limited to Treasury. It was actually the most beneficial tool we had for the CFO organization, because we managed to get that Treasury management system interfaced into the other systems in our ecosystem. So they had real live data coming into the accounting, budgeting, accounts payable, accounts receivable. So definitely for me, the number one technology piece that it was well worth investing in was a TMS.
Indeed, and perhaps a plug into some of our previous podcasts where we've talked about TMSs and APIs, because that integration point that you mentioned, Louise, I think that APIs opening up more real-time connectivity is, I think, a true game changer. Okay, so let's switch gears then. That was the then. How about we sort of bring ourselves up to date? So 60 days in, how do you reflect on how your day-to-day has changed now you're fully on board?
Well, firstly, I have to say that it's been a complete mind change for me. Shifting from the operational ownership mindset to a strategic advisory mindset. I think that has like really changed my day-to-day outlook. Certainly, the change in pace has also changed dramatically, and shifting from being accountable for cash, risk, and liquidity to the accountability of delivering insights, delivering deliverables on a project, and client satisfaction. So every day is new, a day is new, and tomorrow is new for me. So it's been a really fantastic ride so far.
Well, it's certainly never boring, would be my add-on to that. And I've kind of been witnessing it firsthand, right? How that kind of changes, how you've been working on that change. Can we just sort of finish that topic by saying, is there one thing or one thing you could kind of summarize that you've learned specifically in these sort of 60 days?
Well, Paul, I haven't stopped learning. Every day I'm learning something new.
Good answer.
So it's like been non-stop roller coaster ride on learning. But I have to address your question. So I would suppose that project management has been one of the biggest things that I've learned throughout these 60 days.
Yeah.
Tasks such as how to scope a project, how to outline its deliverables. And as funny as it might sound to you, getting to receive trust from your client that what you are actually recommending as best practices is indeed best practice.
Yeah. I think, well, look, I mean, in a way, this is again why we're doing this conversation, Louise, right? You've been coming at it for all these years previously, kind of handing your requirements down and then they get delivered. And guess what you're seeing now is it doesn't get done without true attention to detail. And that's what good project management is all about, really. And that partnership point, I think, is worth picking up on, right? Because again, if there's one thing that we think as Actualized, we differentiate ourselves is our depth of partnerships with clients, and it does come from trust and I suppose also credibility from our delivery. So yeah, completely agree on that. Okay, we're almost there, Louise. 2 questions. First,
Yeah.
we're gonna think forwards. Any thoughts from kind of combining where you were and where you are now? Thoughts on trends that you think would impact Treasury function over the next 5 to 10 years? Very curious to what you're going to say here.
Wow, this is a deep question. And I'll try and keep it as simple as I possibly can and highlight what I think is going to be the biggest trends coming in the next 5 to 10 years that will impact Treasury. I think the number one is technology, really. Real-time data will become a standard. With the APIs, like you mentioned earlier on, with TMSs, so many companies offering such solutions, web-based solutions, cloud-based solutions. Definitely technology is going to take the forefront. There's no doubt about that. Things like payments are going to need to be instantaneous. FX risk hedging is going to need to be instantaneous. Intraday liquidity planning is definitely another thing that we want at our fingertips in real time. I think the second thing would be the regulatory changes that are happening, and they're ongoing, and there's a lot in scope coming up. Treasurers will need to become more advisory, I would say, rather than operational like we have traditionally been. I'm seeing, the need for treasurers to provide more insight into different types of capital structures, different types of funding options that are now out there. And one of the biggest, with technology going in such a fast pace, I think one of the biggest things is risk mitigation. So I see that the treasurer's role is going to start becoming more advisory and more strategic rather than operational. And then the third thing I would say is the use of AI, machine learning, and more internal system integrations. The less we have, the better it's all interfaced, the more real our data is, and the more quicker we can make decisions. And adaptability to business model changes. I see a lot of companies and industries doing a lot more of outsourcing to shared service centers, and therefore the Treasury Department needs to be agile. Are they adaptable? Are they flexible to make the change? Do they have the right knowledge base to do the changes? I would, pick those as my top 4.
I completely agree. There's an awful lot to unpack there, and I think we're going to time ourselves out. I guess a few reactions. One, to what you said about real time, couldn't agree more. I mean, that is the heart of what Treasury 4.0 is all about, this sort of fourth revolution. And that, I think, does link neatly to those topics of AI and other technical advances in terms of making the baseline of what a TMS can do so much bigger and quicker, faster, more automated than before. And in my mind, I connect that dot then to having more time as a Treasury function to be able to kind of input into analysis and value-added services, because the bread and butter is so much sort of we hope, taken for granted. But very cool. Okay, one last question, Louise. We got work to do. We need to carry on. And I know you've just joined here, but we'll call it advice for others. From what you've seen already, if you were to step back into a corporate treasury role, anything that you do differently now?
Oh, wow, Paul. That's an interesting question. Very interesting question. Well, as I said, I see these trends, the 4 trends we just discussed, and you have also highlighted, you would think would be in the forefront for all treasury departments and treasurers going forward. So if I was to step back, I would definitely repurpose and redesign the way we do our daily cash positioning and cash forecasting. I would review and rework the usage of our TMS and the other systems that we interact with, and probably rehire Actualize to come and do a health check again.
Thank you, Louise. Super fascinating. Completely agree. And it is good to reflect. My last closing comment, thank you for the plug about our health check. Obviously, you and I have had some experience on that recently, and it's something that's been a real positive for us as an offering. So we're out of time, but Louise, thank you so much for taking some time to answer my questions. I appreciate it. I hope you guys listening found it interesting, and next episode coming soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul, for your time.
Thanks for joining us for today's episode of Actualizing Success. Make sure to visit us online at www.actualizeconsulting.com, where you can explore our service offerings. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, or your preferred platform. If you've enjoyed what we talked about today, please consider leaving a review and following us on LinkedIn. If you have any questions or would like to share your opinions with us, please send us a note at podcast@actualizeconsulting.com. We look forward to hearing from you.